You are now listening to the Fight Horizon podcast, hosted by Dan Rathmanner. Join him on his journey where you will meet people from all walks of life and their connection to Jiu Jitsu. Now, with no further delay, let's fight the horizon.
All right, welcome back to Fight Horizon podcast. This episode we got Brent back from episode 12, I believe, back in November of 2017. Almost a year. Almost a year. Welcome back,
you
man.
Bastard.
Man, we were sitting on the mats of the old place,
Yeah.
doing it off of jump boxes now. We came,
Yeah.
we were, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, old regular boxes. But yeah, now things have changed for you a little bit, right?
Yeah, very, very much so. Just moved into our permanent spot a few months ago in June, and it's been really awesome for Fluid. We were doing pretty good, and we were growing in the basement of the church for a while. But moving into a spot was huge. I mean, I didn't really know. I knew it would give me a little boost in membership and visibility and all that, but I had no idea that it would quadruple the people coming in.
Not really.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I keep track pretty well how many people are coming through. I had one walk-in in the 2 years. I was almost there for 2 years, just shy of 2 years, like 22 months. I had one person come in and be like, "What's going on in here?" And I've had between 10 and 15 walk-ins every month at my new spot. Yeah.
That is solid.
I'm right next to Old Country Buffet. So
that's strategic right there. That is very strategic.
Yeah, and it wasn't purposeful to be next to Old Country Buffet. But literally you have to walk past my gym to get to Old Country Buffet. So everybody who walks by looks in and they go, "Oh, what's that?" And a lot of people, they know the UFC, so they automatically go, "Oh, well, that's what UFC stuff is."
Right.
So people stop in, and I've got a few very boisterous members that will go out and grab people off the sidewalk and bring them in and introduce them. But I've had to come up with a system on how to get in touch with those people who do come in.
Okay.
I wasn't used to having people walk in, so I didn't really have any way of documenting who came in and didn't take a class, because I was getting about one person a month to sign up with the advertising I was doing in the church. But the people who came in, they purposefully came in, and they came in with the intention to sign up. So it was easy selling to those people because they already were very interested in doing it. And I had been selling personal training for so long, so I knew, kind of how to talk to them and not persuade them, but nudge them to make the sale. So I didn't have that system in place the first month that I was in the new spot, and I didn't realize that I'd have 10, 15 people walking through. I figured I'd have 2 or 3 walk-ins because they'd see the spot. But I had to come up with a system, and I just typed up a little sheet of paper, so anybody who walks in the door, whether they want to train or not, whether they have a kid or it's for them, or they just want self-defense, or they just want Muay Thai, whatever it is, I have a little sheet that is informational for me, that I can get their information and follow up with them on a fairly timely basis. So that's helped quite a bit, and I've signed up about 10 people just from walking in, just coming in and being like, "Hey, how you guys doing? What do you think?" And I have a system in place now where I waive the initiation fee if they sign up when they're there on the first day.
Nice.
So I have a sign-up fee, but if they sign up that day, then I waive that. So it's kind of a hook. And I've had 3 or 4 people who were like, "Oh, I'm gonna go home," and I'm like, "Just so you know," and then they sign up because
it's incentive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some sales tactics that go on, but then those people might not have come back, and now they're members of Fluid Jiu-Jitsu and they love it, and they're
Right.
assimilated, for lack of a better term, into
Assimilated. Love it. Love it. And sometimes people need that little nudge starting jiu-jitsu, starting Muay Thai, starting a martial art like that. They need that.
Yeah,
the
for sure.
incentive. You're saving them money.
Yep.
It's good for everyone.
Yeah,
It
for
really
sure.
is.
And I try to run specials that bring people in and make them not have so much to invest right away. I don't do contracts
Right.
because personally I wouldn't sign up at a place that did a contract. I know you guys do that here. But it's just a personal thing. Like if I had to sign a year contract, I would really think hard about signing up at a place like that.
Reinforces, I need to think this over. I can't make a
Right.
decision right now. Okay.
So I'm trying to get into the mind of the consumer.
Okay.
And it's a different locale. I'm in Greenfield, which is a lower middle class neighborhood. It's not wealthy by any means, so people don't have necessarily a ton of extra funds to allocate to something that is not necessary.
Now, something you guys, something you mentioned back in the last podcast is that you teach with, I believe you started with self-defense techniques and then went into regular class. Is that something you still do?
Yeah, for sure. So I got my black belt from Master Pedro Sauer.
Okay.
He got his black belt from Grandmaster Elio Gracie. And Master Sauer made a promise to Grandmaster Elio that he would continue jiu-jitsu as self-defense. And the stuff that we do in American jiu-jitsu, as it is today, is very sport-oriented.
Yeah.
Yep. And largely to do with the UFC. Back in the first few UFCs, Royce did pure jiu-jitsu against guys who didn't know how to do jiu-jitsu, and it just killed them. And it proved that it was the superior martial art over karate and taekwondo and all the other martial arts. But that evolved, and people started learning how to do jiu-jitsu and how to combat jiu-jitsu. So it became a sport. And what I tell my students all the time is when we do self-defense, this isn't for your jiu-jitsu against someone else's jiu-jitsu. This self-defense is for someone who doesn't know how to do jiu-jitsu, and you have to defend yourself against them trying to hit you, trying to choke you, trying to grab you. That's what this is for. The sport jiu-jitsu, that's my jiu-jitsu against your jiu-jitsu.
Right.
So we're both trained, and we're fighting against our own martial arts. It's like when you watch kung fu films, you see two kung fu artists fighting against each other. That's their kung fu against their kung fu. It's not one guy's kung fu against somebody who doesn't know anything, and there's a difference between and how you got to approach that. So the self-defense aspect comes from Master Sauer, and the black belt test that I took was the curriculum that I teach, essentially, where it's the 75 self-defense techniques of Grandmaster Elio. So I teach that in curriculum for about 4 months, and then it just starts over on repeat, and twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, we do self-defense. And it's those basic things of somebody tries to grab your wrist, how do you get their hands off you? And you learn a little bit of that with the sport stuff, but this goes in depth, and when you train it and when you drill it, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here, but I teach some women's self-defense seminars, but they're useless.
Okay.
They're useless.
Okay.
They're psychologically empowering, but they're physically useless.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because you're not training them consistently. You might take a self-defense seminar, learn a move, and then 2 weeks from then, you won't remember. If somebody tries to grab your hair, you're not going to remember how to stop someone from grabbing your hair because you learned 10 things that one day 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Never mind if it's 2 years later,
Right.
and you did it once. You see what I mean?
Right.
Like you have to do it consistently.
Build consistency.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So teaching this curriculum, it's consistent. I'm doing it consistently. If somebody tries to grab your shoulder, you know exactly what to do. You bring your arm up, you get an Americana.
Yep.
Somebody tries to choke you with one hand against a wall, you knock it off with your elbow. And there's other ways to do it, but these are very efficient ways to get it done. And if you do it consistently and you do it with repetition, then it stays fresh in your mind. And if it ever happens, it's right there. And it's for you all the time.
Speaking of women's self-defense seminars, I love the idea of you doing self-defense at the beginning of class, right? It makes an all-around great martial artist, right? I think a lot of these places, especially you, we're not trying to make fighters, right? We're trying to make martial arts people. We're trying to build people. We're trying to grow people, right? And that's really what a lot of people are trying to do that own these schools. You say you get a lot of you get a lot of walk-ins, right? What's the percentage like, of women to men you have now from changing your locations?
I think fluid is an anomaly, actually, in the Jiu Jitsu world. For instance, yesterday, my Friday class, I had 5 women and 3 men in my class.
For anybody listening.
And I was one of the men.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's wow, that's even better. For anybody listening, it's in a jiu-jitsu class, in a martial arts aspect in general, and correct me if you disagree, it's normally men greatly overpower women.
Yeah, probably 20 to 1.
Yeah.
Fluid is an anomaly like that. We're not a huge school. We've got about a little over 80 people with kids, and we have 50 some adults, and 19 of them are women out of 50.
Yeah. That's a good ratio.
Yeah.
Really
So,
good.
and I don't know if there's any other schools that are running 200, 250 that actually have 19 females on their roster.
Right.
So it's very female friendly, and I think there's a few reasons for that. Number one, I have a core group of 4 or 5 women that are super dedicated to training. So anytime a female comes in, walks in, whatever, there's always 2 or 3 women on the mat whenever that woman walks in. So she's immediately at ease and doesn't feel intimidated when she comes in. Right. So I think that's one of the biggest things. I think another thing is that I don't roll in my classes. I have hour-long classes, and we don't spar. Okay. We don't roll with each other in the class. Okay. So it takes away the physicality of someone who might be a little older or a female who doesn't really want to engage with another guy or a sweaty guy or whatever it is. So we do our self-defense, which is about 20 minutes of our class. We do our warm-up for 10 minutes. We do our self-defense for 20 minutes, and then we do technique for about 30 minutes. Sometimes we drill that technique at the end, depending on how the time goes. But then we bow out, and we have sparring after the class. So anybody who wants to spar can still spar, but it's not part of the class. So if you want to go home, you can go home, and you don't have to spar.
It's not mandatory. It's voluntary.
Right, it's voluntary.
Very low-key. Okay.
Whereas a lot of classes, and this is the 5th school I've been a part of, a lot of schools, that's built into the class. Like you have 15 minutes of technique, and then you have 40 minutes of rolling. And that's intimidating to a lot of females. And I've gone away from that, and I think it's paid off dividends in the demographic that I have. Have fluid. But then you look at the people who compete out of my school, and I've had in 2 years maybe 15 or so people compete, a couple of the same people obviously, but I've only had one person not medal out of anybody who's competed for me under my name.
Out of whites, blues, browns,
purples? All levels. Okay. All levels. That didn't medal. Nice. There was only one person.
Very good stuff.
There were a couple in there that they lost and took second, and there were only 2 people in the group, but they still got a medal.
It counts, right? Showing up's half the battle.
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit, talking about you more personally, kind of opening up fluid jiu-jitsu and really growing this. Is there any outside training? I know you mentioned that you've been part of 5 schools before. Used to sell personal training time. Is there any other outside training that really helps you kind of springboard fluid?
Yeah, for sure. I've been a trainer for over 10 years, personal trainer.
Cool.
I still work as a personal trainer. And I have a different business, and jiu-jitsu is a different business also than, like, say, a car salesman.
Yep.
You know, a car salesman or a computer salesman or whatever it is. They have a one-time meeting with someone, and they're like, here, give me your money. I'll give you the product. Go home. I don't want to see you again.
Right.
You know, whereas with personal training, I have to meet with that person bi-weekly, weekly, monthly, whatever it is. I have a continual relationship with them. So you have to get along with the person that you're selling to.
Yeah.
And there's been a number of people who've come into Fluid that are like, oh yeah, I wanna kickbox, I wanna fight, I wanna get in the cage, you know. And I'm like, okay, well, there's 2 schools down the road that be perfectly happy to take you in. That's just not you're not right for Fluid. You know, we're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school that I want to make martial artists, like you said, and we really work on making your life better. And I said something on Facebook the other day. It was, what if you came to or imagine if you came to a place that you left more happy than when you came every time. And that's what I try to make Fluid. When you come to Fluid, I want you to leave better than you came in the door. So that's the atmosphere that I'm trying to create. And when you get someone who's that rotten apple, you know, it spoils the whole bunch. And I've been pretty good about recognizing those people and saying, hey man, you know, there's another school that might suit you just fine. I didn't start the Fluid for money. You know, I was doing just fine where I was. I just I want to make a culture, and I think anybody who comes in, I had a guy come in the other day, and nobody was there. It was just me. I was the only one there, and we chatted for about 10-15 minutes, and afterwards I'm like, so what do you think? He's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna sign up. He's like, this place is cool. I'm like, you haven't even seen anybody. He's like, I can just feel that this place is awesome.
Something's off, right?
No.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, it was just like being there in the building. You can just like feel what it's. And I've had that happen a few times where people are like, yeah, this place is cool. Yeah. You know, people from Neutral Ground, Neutral Ground, downtown.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a little grungy. They'll come out.
Yeah, that's a pretty nice way of putting it.
Yeah, I love that place. I was there I'm still there.
Uh-huh.
It's going on 8 years now. But people come in and they're like, man, your gym's beautiful. Yep. You know, I love the vibe here. People are awesome, this and that. And it's just a cool place to come to. And nobody's out to kill anybody. Everybody's out to make everybody better. One of the things that stands out, I think, for Fluid is that a lot of gyms, everybody's trying to prove how good they are. So somebody comes in from another gym, you know, a blue belt comes in from another gym, and you're like, oh, I'm a purple belt. I gotta beat him up. I gotta tap him out. I gotta make him, and that's not the case at Fluid. You know, everybody's so cool, and I tell new people, I'm like, you can roll with any colored belt in this place, and they're gonna teach you. Just stop them and ask, and they're gonna teach you how to do things and what to do. And I think I can say that with assurance that across the board, all my colored belts will help a new person who doesn't understand, and they'll take the time to show them something rather than just beating the crap out of them and discouraging them and not letting them learn.
What you kind of touched on, it's impressive because building a culture that has a transparent, positive flow, right, is that should be called an art itself.
Yeah.
You know, that's a very difficult thing to do. You mentioned like having some bad apples stop in. Have you ever had bad apples that you found out later that jiu-jitsu has turned to good apples? Does that make any sense? You know, it's like almost like a transition. Really?
No.
It's just all started off like that?
My friends know me, and this sounds super arrogant. I'm not wrong too often.
Okay.
I read people for a living. I've read people for a living for 10 years.
Yep.
There's a couple people I've misread and allowed in longer than I would have liked to. But for the most part, like, a tiger doesn't change his stripes.
Right.
You know, if you're into drugs and you come in and you hide it from me, you're not fluid material.
Right.
You know?
Right.
If you're upfront about it and you're like, I'm in remission and or whatever, you know, that's a different story. But if you're hiding stuff from me like that, then, you know, that's on me. That's my bad that I didn't catch it.
10 years personal training, you got a pretty good start to how to feel that.
Yeah.
You know?
And I spent, I mean, I've trained probably 300-400 people personally, like one-on-one. We get together, and that's not just including the 1 and 2 time visits. That's people who have paid me for my time to personal train them and make them physically, emotionally better. So you just get to know personalities, and there's, I can't give a number, but there's a number of personalities out there, and some personalities mesh with my personality, and some do not.
Yeah.
And being the head of Fluid, I can't have personalities that don't mesh with mine.
Okay.
In there, doesn't mean that they don't fit at another school. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means that if they would butt heads with me, then they're not in the best place at Fluid.
Right.
And that would disrupt that whole. Imagine if you left a place better than when you came every time.
Right.
And I don't want to disrupt that.
It's such a very delicate balance, right?
Yeah.
You know, it needs to be there. It needs to be held so that, you know, the worry of the group or the growth of the group is more important than the worry of a single person.
Yeah.
Right. Understood.
I have a couple people who always say, like, we're just dumb. I mean, we say some of the dumbest things. We actually made a shirt with all of our sayings. Did you see it?
No, not yet, but
I'll have to post it or
Okay.
something. It's like 20 different sayings, like put a fist in it, like just stupid things that are said on the mat.
Yep.
And a lot of them are Pete, actually. You know, Pete.
Really? Shocker. Okay. Yeah,
But
never heard that
there's
coming.
a lot of sayings that we say on the mat, and every time I'm like, man, this place is just so dumb. And they're like, yeah, you built that. I'm like, yeah, I guess they did.
Yeah, it's your fault.
It is kind of my fault. But on the flip side, it's the people that make Fluid. It's not me. You know, I'm just a big cog in the big machine.
Right. And when you're running full steam at a goal of creating a culture like that, not a business, right? A business is meant to start, go out, get dividends, get money. That's what we're worried about. You know, when you start a culture, you know, you're going to become a better person doing it.
Exactly.
In the process of trying to make other people better.
So you were talking about, or you asked the question about like outside influences to grow the business and things. I did go to a conference, and I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks lately, trying to get stuff in this. Maybe I'm listening to the wrong stuff, and I've gotten good information from them, but money is not my primary drive. You know, that's not the reason that I'm in business. It's not even like a side goal of mine, because I've turned down a lot of money by telling people to go to other places. You know, it's probably making at least $1,000 less a month right now because I've told people to go other places, you know. But it's not about money for me. It's about having that place to go to where if you're in a bad mood and you go, oh, I don't really want to train today, you go, but I'm going to go to Fluid because I'm gonna be happier when I leave. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah. So one of the biggest takeaways I got from one of the seminars I was at was, as a business owner, you don't start off with your black belt, just like you don't start off with your black belt in martial arts. Everybody starts as a white belt, and you have to progress into your black belt in business. You have to figure out what you want out of that business. And I had a business plan. I knew what I wanted. I'm very, very close to my projected growth. I've super exceeded that in the new place, but I have grown into my blue belt, as it were, in business by moving into this space and taking on a much more financial risk and the growth that has happened and the potential that's going on. I've earned my blue belt in business finally. But I didn't look at it that way, and I was just kind of meandering around and like, oh, why can't I do this better? And why is this school growing better than mine? And what do they do? And it's like, I know I just got to learn, just like the white belt has to learn how to get the blue belt, and how the blue belt has to learn how to get their purple. It took me a long time to get to black belt, so I can't expect my business black belt to just be handed to me.
Right,
so.
right, and having patience with yourself.
Yeah.
And, being able not to beat yourself up is probably half the battle, like,
Yep, so I'm just plugging away.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And, if there's anybody out there that's listening that's considering jiu-jitsu, the best thing I'm sure that we can both agree on is come with an open mind. If there's something that you're trying to tackle right away, talking to the person that owns the business, that represents the business, or the club, or the gym, whatever it is, saying, this is my real goal. Be upfront, be open. You're gonna fail. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
We still fail each day, but it's the people we become on the journey. It's not the destination where we get to, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Let's go. What else did I have for you? I wrote down like 500 things.
I saw a few of them. I think it cut off.
Yeah.
How many you had?
I try to prepare, right? So if I don't prepare, and like I told you the other before this podcast, the solo podcast I had before, I wrote 2 pages and then 5 minutes through it, just threw those 2 pages out the window, right? One question I did want to ask you though, you have this location, you've moved into a permanent location by OCB, of course, which is not purposeful, but very tactical. I like it.
It's interesting how that all worked out because, I was looking at spaces for at least 6 months, closer to a year before I actually moved, because I was financially close to being able to get my own place, but I had such a good deal going with the church that I was like, man, I can't justify spending literally 11% more, or not 11%, 1,000% more, 1,100% more, yeah. So I was paying $250 a month for the church, and going out into any comparable space would have been at least $2,000, more like $2,500. So I wasn't being pushed out of the church. I didn't outgrow the church. I was comfortable. I was gaining one person a month. It was comfortable. That was another thing at that conference. It said, this is 3 months or so before I moved, before I even need to move. I said, the worst place you can be is okay. Because if you're okay, you're okay. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to move. You don't have to grow. You're just okay. You're fine. And I was okay. I was doing okay at the church. I wasn't at the place where I could quit my job technically, but I wasn't at the place where I was doing great either. And then a couple months later, I got a letter from the church that they were changing leadership, and the new guy coming in didn't want anything else being in the church. He just wanted church stuff. So I had to find a place. Right. And I had been looking, like I said, and I was pricing out places, and I saw this place, and they wanted a lot of money for it. And I just wasn't financially ready for that. So I chiseled them down some, and it still was substantially more than I was capable of at the time. But I got 2 months to not have to pay a lease, so I was able to save up a little bit of money in that time. So I was like, okay, I can do that. I'll put big marketing campaign in, and by the time I had to pay the first lease, I was covering that. My lease and all my expenses were being covered by the time I got into my new, or by the time I had to pay my new price.
You had that nice buffer period.
Yes.
Right.
So the buffer period helped a ton. And then the location, because I have so much walkthrough, I was able to sign up 2 or 3 people in that time. And then I got 2 or 3 other people to sign up. and I went from signing one person to signing 4 or 5 people a month.
That's awesome.
And it's been steady at 4 or 5 people a month. So it's been really good. And my retention, I think, is also anatomical. Is that a word?
It is today.
It is today. My retention has been fantastic. I've only lost around 20 people out of the 80.
Nice.
So I have only lost 1/4 or
That's good.
so of the people that have actually signed up.
Says a lot about the brand.
It really does.
Yeah.
And I'm picky about who comes in also.
Mm-hmm.
But most people lose, or most schools lose 50 to 75% of their members.
Turn and burn.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I looked the other day and there was like 22 or 24 people who have been on the pay or on the auto pay and have quit.
Pulled. Yeah.
So
what I'm curious about is, location wise, right? What do gyms around here, your gym, other examples of the gyms in the area, how frequently do they turn and burn people? How frequently do they hold on people compared to like the West Coast or the East Coast?
Oh,
you
I
know
don't know
what
those
I mean?
statistics.
A lot more demographic, a lot more population to pull from.
Yeah.
Right. I wonder. Anyways, back to my original question is, you did this recently, right? You did this within the last 7 June.
4 months.
4 months. 4 months.
Yeah,
Nice.
3.5.
Nice. Can you see yourself doing it again?
4.5 months.
Are you going to do it at a different location?
Yeah, I'll have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to.
Okay.
I moved into a 2,800 square foot spot, and I was like, man, how am I going to fill this spot?
Right.
I've got, nothing. I'm going to have so much empty space. No, I could probably double it, and I'd still find things that I need to have more room for.
Yeah.
So as a personal trainer, I would want a training spot.
Yes.
For clients, and we have a Muay Thai program, so that's got its own little designated area. And then I want to, my whole goal, my final goal, is to have a complete wellness center, a fluid wellness center with acupuncture and massage and physical therapy and personal training, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I'd love to have traditional martial arts. Perhaps like kendo and kenjutsu and stuff like that, with weapons and things, Muay Thai, and just have everything under one roof. Yep. So in that, I'll probably grow twice in the next 10 years. My next place, giving away my business plan here, my next place should be about 6,000 square feet.
Yep.
5,000 to 6,000 square feet, and I'll double my mat space, so I'll have a little over 2,000 square foot of mat, and then have personal training area and a Muay Thai designated area. The front entry will be nice like this, and then 3 or 5 years after that, then move into an 8,000 or 9,000 square foot place, and that'll be I'll probably end up buying a building at that point, and having fluid wellness be under that roof, and it'll be all encompassing.
Yeah. And a lot of different of the areas, a lot of the different of the classes will feed off of each other, right? Personal training you can lead that into jiu-jitsu, a lot of different wellness programs. That's great.
Yeah.
How many locations do you want to shoot for? Just one?
So I've thought about that, and I read a book a long time ago about leadership, and it talked about everybody has a certain number of people they can lead, and I don't know exactly what my number is. It's not 80; it's more than that. My guess is I'm around 400 that I can. I think intellectually, I can keep track of 400 people's names, their spouses, their kids, what they do for a living, all that stuff. It might be a little less than that. Maybe I'm overestimating myself. But I'm thinking 400 is my limit. And at 400, then whoever is wanting to take a school at that point will start a satellite of fluid, maybe take 20, 30 people from my place. And then my prices will go up astronomically, so it doesn't crest 400 so that I can still keep a personal relationship. Because I don't want people coming into my gym that I don't know, that I can't tell by name and know who their dog is. I want to have a personal relationship with all my students, and I think over 400 is that mark where it's like, I don't remember who that is. Who is that?
Right.
And I don't want to do that because that's not fair to my students, and that's not what I want.
You're wearing yourself thin in a way
Right.
that you can't throw 100% of yourself at somebody.
So, and if I hit that at 150, then I'll start branching off at that point. If it's 150 and I'm like, I don't remember who that person is, then I'll have somebody start a school somewhere else and go down to 120 and have them take 30 people and start the school and build it back to 150 and start another school and build it back to 150 and whatever my number is. I'm estimating 400. We'll see if that's the number.
Well, you'll find that out, right? Like you said, you just got your blue belt in business, right?
Yeah.
This is something else that you're just going to learn along the path, right? That's fantastic. That's fantastic. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I did read that somewhere too. It's a specific number where
It's Max Lucado's idea.
okay.
It was an interesting. I was in a church for a long time. We talked about that last time, right?
Yep.
And they had us read a leadership book, and it was interesting because my pastor at the time, who I still love, his number was 250. Like he wanted a mega church. He wanted a huge church, and we would get to 275, 300, and we would always have a split. I was there for 11 years, and we would crest that 250, and we'd lose 150 people. Huh. And it was just, and it wasn't a good thing. It wasn't like, we're gonna start another church. It's like no, people just mass exited. Oof. And that was a realization for me of, your number's 250. Stop trying to go over that number. Like that's where you're at. Unless you learn some skills to up your number from 250, 250 is your number.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that I'm aware enough of myself that I know my number when I hit my number, where I don't have a fallout and a backlash.
Right, and it's almost taking yourself out of the situation, right? Like, you're a human being. You have a capacity.
Yeah.
Right? Let's not overshoot and try to be 3 human beings in one.
Right.
Right? And this is how you're really going to help the world. This is how you're going to make your splash and see all the ripples.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So it is almost dumbing down the ego and controlling yourself. It's a very good tactic. I like it. I do.
Well, you think about like superstars like Conor McGregor and how many fans he has. Yep. He's a good fighter, but he's not really great. Mm-hmm. But he's got a leadership ability to have millions and millions and millions of people follow him. Mm-hmm. And then you take someone like Mighty Mouse, who is a great freaking fighter,
pound for pound,
unbelievably good, or Khabib.
Yep.
Amazing fighters. They don't have the leadership ability to garner the fanaticism that a Conor McGregor has. Right. And that's just speaking to that principle of everybody's got a certain number, and you can gain skills to grow that number, but you are at a base number all the time.
Mm-hmm. Like, you can start at a 200, learn how to do 250, but we're not going to get to 500.
Possibly not.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can learn charisma, if you can learn some skills, I believe that everybody has as much potential as they think they have. The problem is most people don't think they have potential.
Right. They need to believe. Right.
Yeah. And I think not believing in yourself is probably the biggest detriment to everybody.
Yeah. I believe so. I mean, no matter if you're that white belt that walks in off the street or you're the black belt that runs the place, not believing in yourself and that we are here for a reason, and everything really kind of does happen for a reason. I mean, it takes away from not only yourself but the situation, right, that you're always encountering.
Well, okay. I know that theory about everything happens for a reason. I don't really subscribe to that.
Okay.
I think that everything can teach you something, but I don't necessarily think everything happens for a specific reason. I think you can take it that way,
Right.
I think you can look at it and say, well, this is the reason why that happened. But sometimes if you don't recognize that, did that happen for a reason?
Oh, well, if I don't recognize it, right, it's my fault in the first place for not recognizing it, not learning
But
anything.
did it happen for a reason if you don't recognize it? It's an interesting question. I've had this discussion with a few people.
Okay.
And I don't 100% disagree, because I think many things do happen for reasons. I think timing is a huge thing. But I don't think everything happens for a reason, I guess.
I would say I think our sight as human beings is limited, whether physically or mentally, right? There are probably things happening around us that a lot of the times we're not seeing, right? So it's hard for us to connect with reason, yes. But if I don't recognize it, yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to connect the dots.
Yeah.
What is that Steve Jobs quote? You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backward.
I'm not familiar with it, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it's what's that? It's the same thing as hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah.
Right. You know. But yeah, no, I would say it's hard to have the whole view with only our two eyes.
Yeah,
But,
for sure. Can't
yeah.
see the trees for the forest,
There you go.
or the forest for the trees, whatever.
You and I, our quotes are just, we're banging them back and
Right?
forth. That's great, man. We're coming up on a pretty good time here. I wanted to personally say thank you. I know you're not feeling the best today. You came through, you stuck it out. We talked a little bit. I think it was a great podcast. I think it was better than number 12.
Yeah, it was fun.
So,
It was fun.
look up Fluid Jiu Jitsu. I'm going to put all my links, or all your links, on my page.
Yeah.
I'll share it out. We'll get a picture before you head out here, and
Yeah, sounds good.
appreciate it. Thank you, Brent.
Cool, man. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you for listening. Please like and share Fight Horizon on Facebook, follow on Instagram, and drop by FightHorizon.com for more episode details, deals, and show dynamics. Like always, fight the horizon.